If I asked you to tell me about a scene in a video game that had an emotional impact on you, chances are pretty big that you'd actually have an example to give, especially if you're someone who plays story-driven games. And I don't mean emotional strictly as in something that brought you to tears, but scenes that simply made you feel. Whether that's sadness, anger, happiness, or something entirely different. This impact can be a pretty important aspect of creating a story. It's proof that you as a writer are capable of conjuring up an immersive world that people can place themselves in and be affected by. Usually, when you think of scenes that affect you this way though, it's scenes that involve characters, like Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1, The Last of Us Part 2, scenes that are obviously supposed to stir strong feelings within you. But what about emotions that don't have anything to do with characters?
Hello, Tofu. Say hi, Tofu.
Aside from these instances of emotional impact, something else that's undeniably important for story-driven video games is location, or rather the player surroundings as a whole. You can't only have characters and a plot, it all needs to take place somewhere. As a simplified example, a story about a war is going to look different if it's set in a small country hundreds of years ago versus if it's set on an alien planet hundreds of years into the future. If you are the kind of person who plays story-driven video games of any kind, I'm sure that you also have plenty of examples in which the setting stands out to you. I definitely know that I do. In some games though, we're not just simply placed in or transported to a location and then that's all there is to it. In some games, the devs actually made a point of revealing it to us in a way that would make us pay attention, that would make us feel things. So, a combination of affecting you emotionally while also bringing you to a certain place. And that's the sweet spot I want to take a look at in this video. What are we being shown? Is there anything that led us to this point? And how are we meant to feel about this based on our circumstances? In real life, if you were taken somewhere to be shown a location, if you were blindfolded and they later took that blindfold off to reveal a specific place to you, most likely it would be to instill a sense of joy, a surprise picnic with beautiful decorations, a renovated house, something positive. This is not always the case in video games, but instead of telling you about it, let me show you. And what better way to begin than with Croft? In the 2013 game Tomb Raider, you follow young archaeologist Lara Croft and her crew as they try to find the lost kingdom of Yamatai. The game starts with a cutscene of them being caught in an intense storm and their ship being destroyed. Lara is washed up on a beach and spots her friends in the distance, but is knocked out by a stranger before she's able to catch up. She wakes up in bursts and realizes she's being dragged away somewhere, into a cave full of skeletons and what looks to be some sort of altar with lit candles, indicating whoever kidnapped Lara is worshipping some sort of deity. She wakes up, bound upside down, but she finds a way to free herself, being injured in the process. As she moves through the cave, she sees more spiritual imagery, what looks like a sacrifice in front of an altar, and lots of skulls. This is clearly not a friendly place, so it makes sense that when someone Lara doesn't know tries to get a hold of her, she desperately gets away despite them claiming they just want to help. After some puzzle solving, Lara successfully clears a blockage that leads outside by blowing up debris, but this causes the cave to start collapsing. She desperately throws herself through the tunnels and over the chasms, once again freeing herself from the stranger who tries to grab her and kills him in the process. And after practically clawing herself up a slippery incline, she finally makes her way outside. After a moment of catching her breath, she gathers her strength and takes in the environment around her. This is clearly not meant to give you a positive feeling. If anything, it's to hammer in just how isolated you are. You're overlooking the sea and there's no land in sight. All you can see are shipwrecks and airplane crash sites to show that you're not the first to come here. With all the skulls in the cave, you can quickly figure out what happened to any survivors. This is another thing that shows you there's something clearly wrong with this island. Not only is its inhabitants hostile and honoring a deity by bringing it human bodies, but there's also the fact that anyone who comes close to the island will meet this fate, crashing into the shore. It's happened for a long time, too. I'm no boat expert, but there's wooden ships with sails here, and the last time these were commonplace was apparently back in the 1800s. All these context clues together not only give you a feeling of isolation, but hopelessness. There may not be a way off this island. Not only that, but it's clearly a dangerous place. The music that plays here is bittersweet as well. It's a beautiful piece, but it's quite simple, as if it's the end of a song. That too adds to making you feel isolated. Not even the music is here to accompany you, and it leaves you as you're faced with navigating this strange place alone. This reveal perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the game, as you have to find your way off this island that's seemingly guarded by some sort of supernatural power, but also develop the skills to pull that off. The only way you'll survive here is to kill before you yourself are killed. Funnily enough, Tomb Raider is not the only game with an impactful location reveal that starts off with a crash or accident of some sort. In BioShock, you play as Jack, a man who's a passenger on a plane that, in the very beginning of the game, crashes into the ocean. Luckily, he survives and strains to swim to the surface, where he's greeted by the view of debris and fire surrounding him, a stark contrast against the night sky. Not far away, he sees a lighthouse and decides to swim to it. As the plane he was on sinks deeper into the water, he enters the lighthouse. Its doors close shut behind him as the lights come on, revealing a statue of a man with a banner below it saying, "No gods or kings, only man." Following a staircase down, all he finds in this place is a bathysphere. With nowhere else to go, and under the scrutiny of the giant menacing statue, Jack enters the bathysphere, and with the pull of a lever, it descends. A film begins playing where a man named Andrew Ryan starts talking about how he was unhappy with the world and its rules, so he decided to create his own alternative.
Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture. A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, rapture can become your city as well.
While meant to make you feel a sense of awe at the technological marvel of an underwater city, and one fully powered at that, it's not all positive. In a way, it feels like you jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. Yet again, there's a sense of isolation, as you're deep in the water, in the middle of an ocean with no land nearby, as far as you're aware. There's also a sense of unease, as it's an unfamiliar place, something we're not used to seeing in real life. And it's very dark down here, despite the flashy neon lights advertising different products and establishments. There seems to be life as we spot someone or something doing repairs, and as we descend, a radio in the bathysphere picks up people having a conversation, but so far we don't know if these people are welcoming or not. There's lots of contrasting feelings going on, especially when paired with the soundtrack that's eerily beautiful with its dramatic tone and intense strings, but you're definitely not made to feel comforted in any way. If anything, you're implicitly told to stay on your toes. This is unfamiliar in more ways than one, and you need to be careful. If you're unfamiliar with BioShock as a game series, if I told you I'm about to bring up another game in the franchise, you might expect it to be pretty similar. And in a way, it does start off in a similar fashion, but it ends up going in a pretty different direction. Quite literally. The third installment, BioShock Infinite, doesn't start with a disaster, but instead the main character seems to be approaching his destination willingly. Despite the darkness and horrible weather, he's on a small rowboat with two people dressed in matching raincoats that practically speak in riddles. One of them hands him a box with his name, Booker DeWitt, on it, which also states that he was part of the Wounded Knee Massacre, a real-life event from the late 1800s where soldiers in the US Army killed almost 300 Native Americans. Inside the box is a mysterious note, a gun, and a picture of a girl whose name seems to be Elizabeth that he's told to bring to New York unharmed. After dropping him off, the two strangers take off, and with nowhere else to go, Booker approaches the lighthouse. As he knocks on the door, a note addressed to him says, "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. This is your last chance." Maybe he didn't come here so willingly after all. Upon entering the lighthouse, which is seemingly empty, he's greeted by an embroidery above a water-filled basin that says, "Of thy sins shall I wash thee," to which he declines. Making his way up the lighthouse, yes, up this time instead of down, he comes across more religious embroidery. "From Sodom shall I lead thee, to thine own land shall I take thee, in New Eden soil shall I plant thee." This place feels almost recently abandoned. There's lights on and a radio playing music, but no one's around. There's a phone Booker tries to interact with, but not a sound comes from it. A note on a map says, "Be prepared, he's on his way. You must stop him." Is this about him? Continuing upstairs, we finally come across another person, but one that faced a very unpleasant fate. With a sign clearly aimed at Booker, saying, "Don't disappoint us," he climbs the final set of stairs up to the top of the lighthouse, where he's faced with a gate covered in bells. The symbols match the ones on the mysterious note from earlier, and after ringing them, the lighthouse shines red as a blaring noise sounds, and a chair appears. Out of options, Booker sits in the chair and is immediately restrained by some sort of mechanism. As walls rise around him, he understandably freaks out. And then, a countdown begins.
Count of 5. Count of 4.
No.
3. 2. 1. Attention.
Just stay calm.
5,000 feet. 10,000 feet. 15,000 feet. Hallelujah.
As opposed to the first BioShock game, this introduction isn't really supposed to make you feel unsettled or unwelcome. Instead, your expectations are almost subverted, as you go from fearing something dreadful with how hostile the lighthouse feels, to being greeted by a sunny view of a city above the clouds, floating, free, and beautiful. That is, until we spot a poster of a man named Comstock, who's referred to as a prophet, and you promptly remember the religious embroidery from the lighthouse crowning you as a sinner. It almost serves as a reminder that while this place is gorgeous, you shouldn't feel like you belong. While the first game makes you feel like you left a bad place for another bad one, Columbia instead feels like a utopia, but a heavily religious one, which kind of brings an odd undertone to it. You get the feeling of freedom, sure, but it's like a restricted freedom. As beautiful as this place is, something isn't right. It doesn't help that as you're lowered into what we'll call the landing bay, you're met with even more religious writing and praising of the so-called prophet. It's not that I'm against religion, believe in whatever you want so long as you don't hurt anyone, but there's something unsettling and cult-like about a man naming himself a prophet and having people follow him. Just like with the first game in the series, there's contrasting feelings being conveyed. While this place seems peaceful on surface level, don't be fooled. This is a BioShock game after all, which means things are never as they seem. So far, all the locations revealed to us have had pretty sizable introductions beforehand to sort of set the mood. Not every game does this though, but it can still be a pretty effective reveal if done right. In Outlast, when starting a new game, we're hit with a content warning followed by a short description of our role in the game. You are Miles Upshur, an investigative reporter whose ambition is about to earn him an intimate tour of hell on Earth. Always willing to risk digging into the stories no other journalist would dare investigate. You will seek out the dark secret at the heart of Mount Massive Asylum. Stay alive as long as you can. Record everything. You are not a fighter. To navigate the horrors of Mount Massive and expose the truth, your only choices are to run, hide, or die. This text, paired with the ominous music and eerie background visuals, is all you really need to understand just what kind of game this is going to be. Already you feel unsettled and nervous thinking about what you're going to be subjected to. The phrase, "stay alive as long as you can," doesn't exactly bode well for you. You will most likely not make it through this entire ordeal alive, and the game knows it. As you press continue, the actual game begins. It's dark, of course, and Miles is driving down a dirt road surrounded by tall grass and bushes while listening to the radio. In the distance, he sees a big building, almost like a mansion. As the winding road brings him closer to the imposing structure, the radio loses signal. A sign that says Mount Massive Asylum is lit up by the car's headlights, and Miles turns the car to reach the gates. He parks the car and picks up a folder, revealing an anonymous email addressed to him that says terrible things are happening at the asylum. This has to be what made him come here in the first place. He then picks up batteries and a camcorder. Makes sure it's working properly. And then steps out of the car to take one more look at Mount Massive Asylum. The introduction to the game and the location reveal are neatly packed into one. And it works! You get all the plot-related information you need through a paragraph of text. And once that's done, all that's really left is to bring you to the place where all the events will go down. Because the game is about this one area, this specific asylum and its secrets, it makes sense to have the game intro be focused on the reveal of the building. And the reveal sets the mood perfectly. The fact that the road you're on is a dirt road with overgrown plants all around is meant to show that once again you're pretty far from any populated areas. Once again, you're isolated. Isolation is obviously a common theme in horror games, or in games with horror themes where you're meant to feel on edge. It's scarier to know that no one is gonna come help you no matter how much noise you make. Even if you escape whatever place you're in, you have a long way to go before you'll find true safety. This is emphasized by how the car radio loses signal as you approach the asylum gates. There's no communication to be had with the outside world. Even if you had a phone, you wouldn't be able to use it. Additionally, while the lights are on in the building, indicating signs of life inside, there are no workers around. No staff is present to greet you or check your credentials by the gate. This is an asylum, and if there's no signs of staff, then the only people left are patients. And given that this is a horror game, we all know what that means. Also, just as the text in the beginning says, there's no way for you to fight back. Evidently, you won't even be able to find someone else who's willing to fight with or for you. The way the asylum is revealed to us really emphasizes that. There's no sense of false hope here. The only feeling you're meant to get is that of helplessness, and, of course, fear. While all the games I've talked about thus far have aimed to give players some sort of negative emotion, this is of course not always the case. There's plenty of examples of the contrary, even in games with horror elements. Dying Light 2 is a post-apocalyptic game where you have to navigate a world overrun by zombies. It's not too bad in the daytime, but when night falls, that's when the horror comes in. The intro to this game is about an hour long, and before we get to the location that's revealed to us, we have to get through it, so there's quite a bit of build-up beforehand. You play as a man named Aiden, making his way through the woods with his friend Spike. Together, they reach an abandoned house that clearly belonged to someone with money. Inside, Aiden spots a poster advertising the last spring party, and he comments on the fact that the virus causing the state of the world had gone out of control long before the time of the party. He then opens a door in the house, which leads to an area full of dead bodies. These people died peacefully, surrounded by friends and alcohol bottles, hence why it was referred to as the last party. After exploring a little, Aiden meets Spike on a second-floor terrace where the latter mentions successfully tracking down a guy who knows the location of a man named Waltz, someone that Aiden had seemingly been looking for. This guy is in the city of Villador, and after parting ways with Spike, Aiden travels to a radio tower to make contact. By the time he gets to the tower, night has fallen, and so he has to fight off a special infected before starting the generator to power up the place. He's not supposed to radio his contact until the next morning, so he goes to sleep. While asleep, he has a dream of him as a child in some sort of facility, together with a little girl named Mia. You can tell they're unhappy to be there, and it's made clear why as Aiden is taken away and restrained before a doctor, Waltz, injects him with something. The dream then progresses to the laboratory being on fire, with Aiden looking for Mia, before adult Aiden wakes up to the sun having risen. Getting in touch with his contact over radio, he explains that his goal is to find Mia as they were separated as children, and the stranger decides they should meet up in a metro tunnel. Before the conversation ends, Aiden is told that Mia is still alive, and judging by the music that begins playing as we look at the sunny valley below, knowing this fills him with hope.
I have to at least know if she's alive.
She's alive. I'm going to the rendezvous. I'll see you later, Aiden.
Once Aiden gets to the tunnel, though, this hope is quickly replaced by something else as he sees blood and corpses everywhere. Something horrible is lurking in the darkness of the metro, and unfortunately, he finds out exactly what. He's saved by the contact he was supposed to meet up with, but not before being bitten. Suffering the effects of this, he faints and wakes up to the stranger being attacked by raiders. After defeating them, Aiden is told to make his way to Villador, as he'll learn the whereabouts of Waltz and Mia there. Once he gets to Villador, though, the effects of his bite make themselves reminded. This, of course, doesn't go down well with the locals, who then try to hang him, but he's quickly rescued by a man named Hakon. After making sure Aiden isn't at risk of turning, Hakon offers to help him get started in the city. They're to meet outside on a balcony, and this is when we finally get to see Villador.
Not bad.
This time, the reveal isn't meant to make you feel isolated. It's meant to make you feel the opposite. You've been traveling on your own almost this entire time, surrounded by pretty much nothing but greenery and a few scattered buildings with no life in them. Now that you finally see civilization, a city with buildings as far as the eye can see, you feel wowed, hopeful, in a world where not much hope is left, as shown by the last spring party. Those people knew they were going to die, but wanted to go out on their own terms, despite having the option to keep living and fight for survival like everyone in Villador. It pairs nicely with the fact that Aiden recently found out that the person he's been searching for over a decade is still alive, and that the answers to all of his questions can be found in Villador. The whole place represents hope, not only for him, but also for humanity as a whole, as they're able to have a large community like this in a post-apocalyptic world. As imperfect as it is, it's still standing. Even still, there's a sense of uncertainty, especially with how the locals treated you when you arrived. The place is unfamiliar to you, you're unfamiliar to everyone here. A lot is up in the air. You're not quite safe, though not in immediate danger either. But there's still a semblance of relief, maybe even excitement, when compared to everything you've seen so far. Despite somewhat mixed emotions, it's a reveal that gives you a far more positive feeling than the other games I've talked about so far, and there's many more examples of such. One is from Dragon Age Inquisition, which also has an amount of gameplay before we get to the reveal, but instead of the hour that Dying Light 2 took, it takes you at least 5 hours to get to it, so let me just tell you the gist of what you need to know. In Dragon Age Inquisition, you play as someone who is, for the time being, known as the Herald. After an explosion that the Herald was tragically the only survivor of, there's a glowing mark on their hand and a giant hole in the sky. This hole is known as the Breach, and is essentially a hole in the barrier which keeps the physical world separated from the world of spirits and demons. There's a theory that the mark might be able to close the breach, as the two seem connected, and it's decided that the theory should be tested. A lot of work goes into the preparation, as is obvious when walking through the base of operations known as Haven. There's soldiers training to fight whatever enemies you may come across, smiths making sure everyone's gear is in check, herbalists keeping everyone healthy, even a tavern with a performing bard to feed people and keep up morale. They even bring back the Inquisition, an organization that's not been around for a long time, which is why the game is named what it is. During these preparations, the Herald recruits capable people into their own inner circle, and after some pretty intense missions to get even more help, they set off to finally close the breach. In the end, they succeed with this. With everyone overjoyed, all of Haven is celebrating their hard-earned victory, until this dude shows up and ruins the party by attacking them. Oh, he also has a dragon. This is Corypheus, the one responsible for the explosion that opened the breach. He's after the mark on the Herald's hand and plans to use it to ascend to godhood. The Herald essentially distracts Corypheus as everyone else escapes before Haven falls. Thank God for that, because it leads to him dropping the hardest line ever.
Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
The Herald manages to cause an avalanche with one of the trebuchets, and luckily they escape alive. But where will they go? They're in the middle of the snowy mountains, and without any sort of survival gear, finding safety is going to be hard. Following any signs of life they come across, the Herald painstakingly makes their way across the snowy landscape before they finally find the place where the survivors have set up camp. Later, one of the Herald's companions, Solus, pulls them aside for a chat. Now that Haven is gone, the Inquisition needs to rebuild elsewhere, and he knows exactly where they can all go.
By attacking the Inquisition, Corypheus has changed it. Changed you. Scout to the north. Be their guide. There is a place that waits for a force to hold it. There is a place where the Inquisition can build, grow.
There's no debate around it. This is a pretty epic reveal, and the dramatic orchestral music plays a big part in making it so, with the way it ramps up when Skyhold is in view. The feelings you're meant to get, and that I think they managed to pull off, are definitely positive ones. There's awe at seeing a giant fortress built on top of a mountain, as well as relief that you finally have a place where your army can grow bigger than before. Big of a blow as it was to lose Haven, it enabled you to move on to greater things. While meant to give the characters in the game hope, it's meant to do the same for you. You played for hours to build up your forces, only for everything to be destroyed in a much shorter amount of time. So knowing there's a chance to rebuild and come back from it stronger is motivating. Also, while Skyhold is isolated, that's not a bad thing this time, as opposed to the earlier examples in this video. Those locations were the danger, or where the danger resides, whereas this is safety away from it. Isolation is not always a bad thing, especially now that you know who you're facing off against and how powerful your enemy is, so it hits even harder that way. It'll be difficult for him to find you all the way out there, and so you have time to prepare in case he decides to attack again. And time is what you need. This was a big curveball, not only being attacked out of nowhere, but by something you don't really know what it is. You also don't know the full extent of Corypheus's powers. You know nothing about your enemy, and in order to defeat him, you'll have to find out, something that will take time to do, which you now thankfully have. Another reveal that gives off a similar feeling, though less bittersweet, can be found in another well-loved game franchise, also developed by BioWare. This one also requires a little bit of gameplay before we get to the scene I'm going to talk about. In the sci-fi game Mass Effect, you take the role as Lieutenant Commander Shepard, an outstanding soldier in the Earth Space Force known as the Alliance. Their crew is on the way to the human colony Eden Prime after reports of some sort of unfamiliar technology, a beacon, being unearthed. It seems to have been made by Protheans, an alien race that supposedly went extinct 50,000 years earlier. Shepard finds out that this is meant to be a mission where they're evaluated by this man named Nihilus, as they've been nominated as the first human Spectre. Without getting too deep into the politics of the game, as this is meant to be a summary, Spectres are basically an elite group of agents, including the most influential species in the galaxy. Having a human Spectre is a big deal, as it proved that humanity is to be taken seriously, despite only finding out about intergalactic travel pretty recently. On the way to Eden Prime, they receive a transmission showing that the colony is under attack, but it's hard to discern by what. Nihilus decides to go off on his own for the time being, so Shepard's squad sets out without him. On the ground, one squad member is killed by the enemies, but they gain a new one pretty soon after, as luck would have it. While Nihilus is doing recon on his own, he comes across a fellow Spectre, Saren. Letting his guard down as he believes Saren can be trusted, that's unfortunately the last mistake he makes. Shepard's squad finds out about this incident from a survivor who witnessed it all. After fighting their way through the colony, the squad finally secures the beacon. One of the members accidentally triggers some sort of mechanism by walking too close to it, however, and in order to protect him, Shepard throws themselves in harm's way. They're dragged closer to the beacon and subjected to mysterious visions before the beacon explodes and Shepard blacks out. When waking up on the ship later on, the commander is informed that since things look pretty bad, with one Spectre dead, another one apparently going rogue, and the beacon destroyed, they have to explain this to the Council, which is basically the galaxy's government. The Council is based in a space station called the Citadel, and so they make their way over there to attend an audience.
Good timing, Commander. I was just about to bring us into the Citadel. See that taxpayer money at work.
Of that ship.
The Ascension, flagship of the Citadel fleet.
Well, size isn't everything.
Why so touchy, Joker?
I'm just saying you need firepower too.
Look at that monster. Its main gun could rip through the barriers in any ship in the Alliance fleet.
Good thing it's on our side then.
Citadel Control, this is SSV Normandy, requesting permission to land.
Stand by for clearance, Normandy. Clearance granted. You may begin your approach. Transferring you to an Alliance operator.
Roger, Alliance Tower. Normandy out.
tower, please proceed to dock 422.
While this isn't the first location you see outside of your ship, the first one being Eden Prime, of course, it's the first one that really emphasizes the setting of the game. The colony still felt somewhat similar to Earth, which I believe is why it was such a suitable place for humans to establish a colony there, so it doesn't feel as special walking through that environment. The Citadel, on the other hand, is the first location you see that truly fits in with the sci-fi genre, in a game set over 100 years into the future. This reveal is a little different from the previous ones I've mentioned in the way that you see the location as a whole from a big distance, approaching in a spaceship, so it's hard to gauge its size, especially since it's in the middle of space and you don't really have anything nearby to compare it to. You're still made to feel impressed and awestruck by what a technological and architectural wonder the Citadel is though, but if not by what you see, then by what you hear. Your crew excitedly reacting to what they're seeing and the music intensifying the moment we lay eyes on it. As you approach and get a better sense of scale though, it becomes more and more impressive. Seeing how tiny your ship is in comparison to the Citadel flagship, and remembering that the flagship is just another ship, so it's still way smaller than the Citadel itself, that's when it starts to actually hit you. When you realize that the arms of the station are gigantic parts of a city, that's when you truly begin to grasp just how grand this place is. It's almost like delayed astonishment. Aside from all that, there's of course the fact that this is a safe place. Despite not knowing much about your enemy and how powerful they might be, they destroyed a whole colony after all, and there's still the mysterious ship you saw. If there's any place where you might feel safe no matter who you're up against, it's a place like this that's colossal and full of people. I find it impressive that short cutscenes can be so powerful as to invoke so many feelings and thoughts in a people, kind of like a picture is worth 1,000 words sort of thing. But not only cutscenes have this power. Even smaller reveals that don't get their own dedicated short film can have this effect on you, and one such example can be found in Elden Ring. If you don't know what Elden Ring is about, I don't know what to tell you because I barely know myself. They make it very convoluted. After creating your character, you get a short narration vaguely telling you about the state of the world you're in, that the great Elden Ring was shattered, and as a result, the Queen is nowhere to be found. Each of her children took shards of the Elden Ring, which led to a war, referred to as the Shattering. The player character, the Tarnished, then wakes up and is told to stand before the Elden Ring to become the Elden Lord. The empty building they wake up in leads out into a foggy and dark landscape, illuminated by a giant glowing tree. It's quiet here, aside from the wind. And it seems they're alone, at least for the time being. Making their way downhill, they come across an enemy that they either kill or are killed by. Even if they do survive the encounter, the only way they can go after is one that will kill them anyway, so they'll end up dead in the end no matter what. After this, they come back to life in a dark cave. Here, they can choose to go deeper into the Cave of Knowledge, which is the tutorial section of the game. But it's optional, and you're brought back to the same place again after completing it. There's a set of stairs leading up, and following this, the Tarnished eventually gets to a big lift. Reaching the top, they're met with a big door, and after opening it, they go outside to see Limgrave. Of course, the music instantly hits when you take in the world for the first time, as the audio you've heard so far, aside from the boss battle music, has been limited to ambient sound effects, and as your vision has been limited by fog and cave walls. When you open the door to a bright open area full of ruins, trees, and cliffs pretty much as far as the eye can see, it almost feels like a small contrast. You know how merciless this world is. Given the very first section of the game where you either die to a strong boss right out the gate, or you die from the ground crumbling beneath your feet. So even seeing this beautiful and seemingly calm landscape, you don't really feel particularly safe or hopeful that things will get easier, especially not if you've played a Soulsborne game before and know how challenging they are. Ass! Not to mention that the music sounds almost eerie, too simple to be meant as something that'll make you full of joy. It shows you that this world is beautiful, sure, but don't be deceived. Additionally, there's no sun in the sky to light up your surroundings, but instead it's yet again the imposing tree in the distance that provides all the light. So this place is unfamiliar, dangerous, and absolutely gorgeous all at the same time. And you're made to realize all of that in just a quick moment. An example somewhat similar to this, where you don't get a dedicated cutscene for the reveal, but it's still pretty impactful, can be found in Resident Evil Village. This game begins with a fairy tale narration of a little girl getting lost in the woods and being offered help by various creatures, before it takes a more sinister spin. We don't get to hear the full story, as it turns out this is a fairy tale being told to keep a baby, Rose, asleep. You play as Ethan, the father of the baby. The mother, Mia, tells him to take their daughter up to bed as she finishes dinner, and after a slow walk upstairs, he puts little Rose in her crib. Dinner is ready by the time he comes back downstairs, and a discussion begins between him and Mia. They're talking about the traumatic events that happened to them in Resident Evil 7, the game prior to this one, and how Mia seems to want to forget everything, whereas Ethan is struggling to do so. They argue about it for a moment before Mia is rudely interrupted mid-sentence by a bullet hitting her in the shoulder, to which she barely flinches. The lights then suddenly go out and she's shot several more times. This man, who Resident Evil fans will know as Chris Redfield, someone usually known as a good guy, walks inside and apologizes to Ethan before yet again shooting Mia to make sure she's dead. Ethan, understandably confused and upset, is then escorted out of the house but starts resisting as they take Rose away, and as a result, he's knocked out. He later wakes up to the sound of a cell phone ringing, and the first thing he sees is a transport van toppled over in the middle of nowhere, and one of the agents from earlier unconscious on the ground. It almost looks like they've been in an accident. Ethan answers the phone and demands to know where Chris and his daughter are, to which the other person on the line responds that he's on a secure channel and not authorized to use it before the phone dies. With more questions than answers and nowhere else to go, Ethan follows the road ahead where he can see footsteps leading away. It's dark and cold, so he moves slowly while barely able to see anything in front of him. He crawls under barbed wire, through what looks like a hole in a fence, and keeps moving forward despite the sight of dead crows on the ground and hanging from the trees, as well as noises sounding like shuffling and growling coming from the woods around him, indicating that he's not alone. Ethan eventually reaches a small, run-down cottage that he moves through. It seems like someone lived here once, long ago, as their stuff is still around. Despite the house being abandoned, there's blood on the floor. Following the trail, Ethan walks down to a basement where he hears a noise. He follows the blood and the noise to a wardrobe at the far end of the basement, and opening it up, he finds a little mouse inside. Aww. When he turns around to go back, the ceiling above him begins to give way as loud sounds are heard from upstairs. He goes to check it out and is met by the sight of furniture toppled over, items strewn about everywhere, and there's a giant hole in the wall. Ethan leaves the cottage through the hole and follows a small trail through the claustrophobic woods and mountain walls until he reaches a cliff with a view.
Where the hell am I?
While a brief reveal, it succeeds in giving you the same feeling as some of the games I talked about earlier in this video. If the trek here was an indication enough, you're once again isolated and far away from any help you might be able to get. Not to mention it's quite expansive, which makes you feel smaller and even more like a fish out of water. The first thing your eye is drawn to, however, is of course the big castle shrouded in fog. I find that depending on the atmosphere, big structures make you feel one out of two things. You're either awestruck or intimidated. The atmosphere here goes hand in hand with the latter. The castle looks creepy more than beautiful, easily towering over the rest of the village, like it's watching your every move. The sun is hiding behind the mountain range, peeking from behind just enough to enable you to see the whole village, but not high enough in the sky to fully illuminate the area and cast it in a warm glow. The village is cold and I don't just mean physically. There's barely any color to be seen. It looks like everything is a shade of gray and desaturated blue. Of course, the snow adds to this, and the fact that it's winter, so all the trees are dead, contributes as well. It's eerily lifeless, but it's also very clear that this place isn't empty. There were tracks in the snow leading here. There was whatever wreaked havoc in the cottage you were in earlier. There's the sound of a church bell ringing over the valley. Now it's just a question of if the people who live here are friendly or not. And based on what you've seen so far, you know what guess is probably more likely. Speaking of the church bell, as always, sound is important to the reveal. There's no music this time, just silence aside from the bell, which works well with the feelings of isolation and lifelessness that you get from the area. Sometimes less is more, and this is a good example of that. Of course, there's also the sense of uneasiness and confusion coming from the sudden contrast you're exposed to. Not long ago, you were enjoying an evening in your house, surrounded by warmly glowing lights and colorful interior design. Then, things went from 0 to 100 as you watched your wife get killed and your baby get taken away, before you then ended up in this place that's the complete opposite of warm and colorful. You're entirely unequipped to deal with this situation. Not only do you have nothing with you but the clothes on your back, but you also have no idea what's going on whatsoever, so you can't even mentally prepare. This is really the first time you've been able to stop for a second and take a breather, but it's not a positive breather, nor is it really meant as one. You're not meant to feel safe enough to slow down and take a break. Finding this place is a clear sign that things are about to ramp up even more. To think that all of these things are conveyed to you in just a few seconds, of course in tandem with however much or little exposition you got beforehand, is so cool to me. Not to mention how quickly the human brain picks up on context clues. You don't really realize the extent of it until you lay it out this way and analyze it, which is why looking at this sort of thing is so interesting, as you can see how it combines all these little aspects of video games that you're not explicitly told to acknowledge with our psychology. All of this is important for the sake of show, don't tell. You don't want to have to tell people outright what kind of environment they're in. Hey, this place is scary. This place is violent. This place is happy. You should be able to convey that to set the tone by showing players and making them feel instead of spelling it out to them. And while players might not consciously think about it too often, game devs definitely do, as the psychological influence an environment has is something that they need to keep in mind, and some studios have said as much. At its core, game environment design encompasses the creation of virtual spaces that evoke emotion, foster engagement, and enhance gameplay. It involves a multidisciplinary approach, drawing from elements of architecture, art, storytelling, and psychology. Environmental design is not merely a backdrop for gameplay, it's a pivotal element that shapes the player's experience, immersion, and emotional engagement with the game. A well-crafted environment can transform a simple game mechanic into a compelling narrative journey. It's fantastic when players empathize with a character who's subjected to something sad, or when players share a laugh with a character when something exciting happens. But making a location speak for itself and evoke emotions is impressive, and worth attention too. Thank you for watching. By the way, thank you so much for the love on the last video. I didn't expect that at all, so thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.